Police brutality is not the only tool in the arsenal of white supremacy which is accessible to its supporting framework of structural racism. So if you believe that Black Lives Matter, as all the social media posts, email blasts, and organizational statements propose, you'll agree we must also specify what that means beyond the criminal justice system. Do all Black Lives Matter? Do Black Lives Matter in healthcare? There was a White Coast protest for Black Lives event at Strong Memorial Hospital. It was powerful, but after the marching stopped for George Floyd in the catastrophic impact of COVID-19 pandemic shutdown is realized, what changes will the healthcare sector master force foster anti-racism and more equality for Black people? How deep is the commitment? Are we ready to do the work to shift from centuries-old racist structures to intentionally anti-racist institution? If Black Lives Matter, do you promise to ensure anti-Black racist deniers are met with the same decisions marginalized as Holocaust deniers? That the existence of anti-Black racism rises up to the level of empirical truth and not to have two sides? As protests across the world against police brutality, systemic racism, and injustice, this is a great time for our community to reflect what we can do to empower Black lives and all people of color within our communities and within our world. In order to accomplish this, we must be more than not racist. Everyone must fight to be actively anti-racist. I suggest beginning with reading that explains the contents for the development of Black Lives Matter as a movement in the racial history of the United States. For example, Megan Ming Francis explored how social movements that combat police brutality, such as Black Lives Matter, have played a key role in the development of political institutions in the United States. Similarly, Chloe Thruston situates the Black Lives Matter movement in the historical content of American racial equality movement in protest against the U.S. justice system. On May 19, 2009, George Floyd, an American African man, lived in Minneapolis, Minnesota, was brutally murdered by a police officer who kneeled on his neck for upwards of 8 minutes while 3 other officers helped the first officer and watched as George cried out to them, "I cannot breathe." After days of protests across America, all 4 officers were finally arrested. While these officers have been arrested, this is just one case of police brutality targeted at people of color among many, many others that people are speaking out against and demanding justice for. The fight is not yet over. Members of LGBT communities, for instance, are more likely to get involved in social movements like Black Lives Matter. Tyson King Meadows analyzed a unique system of Baltimore citizens before the April 2015 death of Freddie Gray, who suffered a severe spinal cord injury in police custody. Spearheading this call for action is the intentional human rights movement titled Black Lives Matter. These 3 words are a cry to dismantle white supremacies and end racial target violence, and to fix the broken system in Black Lives Matter. People struggling more simply because of their color of their skin. This push to fix the outdated and radically targeted system applies to many different outlets such as schooling systems, housing, jobs, opportunities, healthcare, and the most talked about today, policing and incarcerating. As the Black Lives Movement has gained more and more traction since its origin in 2013, some have fired back at the statement by saying all lives matters, unable to see how this message minimalizes the movement for equality and ignoring the deeply rooted racial divisions within the United States divide. While it's understood that all lives have importance, the reason for saying Black Lives Matter is because they are under attack from different systems purely because of the color of their skin, while white people are not. We are unable to see this plainly in many different systems, especially within the law enforcement and criminal sentences. Willie Simmons, a black man from Alabama, for instance, was sentenced to life without parole for stealing $9 back in 1982, while Brooke Turner, a white student at Stanford, was convicted of 3 charges of felony sexual assault and only served 6 months' time in jail for his actions. There are so many cases similar to this where black people are condemned for minor crimes and must serve years and years in jail, while white perpetrators get off almost freely for horrendous crimes, showcasing the white privilege and systemic racism that is alive and well today. We must lift up all black lives and support them in fight to freedom and equality in all areas from long history of system oppression. McHarris says devising funds can begin the process of ending cultural punishment in the criminal justice system, and it's the only optional local governments haven't tried in their attempts to end deaths in police custody. Trainings and body cameras haven't brought about the change supporters want. McHarris grew up in a neighborhood where there weren't real discernible threats to gun violence, and he said he never thought to call the police. This was for his own safety. Instead, he cried and relied on his neighbors who helped him navigate threats of the danger. Defunding is simpler for disbanding, though, and at least one mayor has already taken a step after California decried a proposal to increase Los Angeles Police Department budget to $1.86 billion. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti agreed to slash between $100 to $150 million from the proposed fundings. Many voices are speaking up against these injustices, all different races, background, ages. When asking some of my peers what Black Lives Matters meant to them, what their actions they want to see done to further equality and these different spheres, policing, incarcerating, political action, and etc., they brought forth similar ideas. What they want to see in police actions that move, defund the police, and focus on using that money for things such as housing, service of schooling systems, where African Americans are disproportionately affected, along with electing people into power that will make a genuine effort to make sure Black people are able to have equal treatment and opportunities within all areas. Now is the time to stand with the people of color within your economies, or within your communities, amplify their voices, and take action.